What is going on YouTube? It's your boy Spanko, and today we're back with another deck profile. Now, two things I want to let you guys know before we get into the deck profile. One, well, it's more like I want you guys to tell me, what do you guys think of the new style of deck profiles where I talk to you guys, head over to the deck profile, and then do my outro after. Let me know what you guys think of the new style. I think it's a really cool style. It gets me to interact with you guys a little bit more. Let me know obviously in the comment section down below because I really do want to put out the best quality I can for you guys. And the second thing I want you guys to do is hit that notification bell because a lot of people are actually not seeing my videos, and if the stats are correct, which YouTube I don't think lies, even though they do a lot of unfun things for me. But the stats say that 80-something% of you guys are not subscribed to the channel who are viewing. So if you guys enjoy the video, enjoy the content, make sure to consider subscribing to the channel and liking this video. Now, today's profile, we're doing Trickstar. Trickstar is one of those decks that I loved playing when it came out. I loved playing for a while. Unfortunately, because of the hits, it hasn't seen a lot of play recently. However, I think I came up with a really cool way to play Trickstar. Now, I actually have two builds for Trickstar. Today's build is the going first build, and I wanted to show off to you guys. But I also have a going second build that I really want to show off. So make sure to stay tuned because I think I'm going to drop that video sometime next week. So if you guys enjoy Trickstar, I hope you guys enjoyed the video. And if you guys are new to playing Trickstar, then I think and I hope that this video is educational and lets you know pretty much how to play this deck at a competitive level in today's metagame. Now off to the video. Okay, so off to the deck profile, we are starting off with triple Candina, triple Licorice, triple Corabane, as well as one Lily Bell. Now I'm playing the full Trickstar package, pretty much all the good monsters I should say. There's obviously a ton of other Trickstar monsters, but I am playing all the good monsters. And the reason for that is because you really want to focus on making Dragoon in this deck. And yes, I'm sorry guys, it is a Dragoon deck, I'm sorry. However, it just works so well because Trickstars are so good at making Link 2s for little to no cost, right? Candina, search Lily Bell special, boom, Link 2. You got normal summon Candina, search anything else, Corabane special, boom, Link 2. So there's so many ways that you can go about it, and that's why I thought the Trickstar engine was really good, and it became so that this deck is more of an engine where you can make Dragoon and sit on a few trap cards, and then that's pretty much where your deck is going to go, and your opponent's going to have a really hard time playing around that. So that's kind of where the deck wants to go at. And so obviously I am playing triple of each of the good ones. Now a lot of people have cut Licorice to 2, and I still believe in Licorice at 3 because it helps you dodge a lot of hand traps. Now what I mean by that is Candina, when it's normal summoned, right, you can search a Trickstar card, correct? Okay, cool. Now your opponent has a chance to use Impermanence or Effect Veiler at this point, or even if you're going second, then they have a chance to use Forbidden Chalice. Licorice helps you dodge those because it'll bounce Candina back to your hand, Licorice will be on the field, Imperm or Effect Veiler or Chalice will miss their target, and Candina is going to resolve. So the reason I really like Licorice is because we don't have Call by the Grave anymore. I mean, it's at 1, and I mean, you can see that we don't play it in this deck, obviously, so that's why I just thought Licorice was really good at 3 because it helped your Candina resolve pretty much every single time. Obviously, it can't stop an Ash Blossom, however, it does dodge Imperm, does dodge Effect Veiler, and those are also pretty prominent in this format, right? So Candina and Licorice are really good in tandem, and then Corabane I am maxing out at 3 of because, again, we want to get to a Link 2 as fast as possible. On top of that, she's just a big monster that you can special summon later in the game. Like, you don't need to necessarily use her for the Link 2. Like I said, you can use Lily Bell with Candina as well. So that's why I just decided to max out on all the Trickstar monsters. If, of course, only one Lily Bell, you wouldn't want to play more than one because you just want to search her, right? But for the most part, that's why you are playing all of these. The next, we're playing triple Droll and Lockbird. Now, Droll and Lockbird is still really good, and you guys have to remember that Trickstar Reincarnation plus Droll combo is still one of the most broken combos in the game, and it's still very much viable. But I think what people forget is that Droll and Lockbird is actually pretty good in today's format. It's really good against Virtual World. It's really good against a lot of decks that search a lot. So the thing is, even if you don't have the Reincarnation plus Droll combo, Droll is just pretty good generally in this format. Now this is the only hand trap I'm playing because of course we are going first, and our whole point of the deck, like I said earlier, was to make Dragoon and then set a bunch of trap cards, right? So that's why the only hand trap I'm playing here is Droll, is because the Droll Reincarnation combo is, one, just too good to not play. Like, to be completely honest with you, imagine setting up a Droll Reincarnation combo with like a Dragoon on the board. Like, your opponent is not going to win that game. There's no way your opponent can play through no hand plus a Dragoon, right? It's just close to impossible, next to impossible. So that's why I just thought Droll and Lockbird was really important. We're playing one Scythe because we are playing the Sanctum, and we're playing the Dragoon package. So that's pretty much it for the monsters. Very low monster count, but you do need to play the Trickstars in my opinion, and obviously you need to play these even though they're considered the bricks. You do need to play them, of course, because it just makes the ceiling of the deck so much higher, right? Now, unfortunately, I know Trickstar hasn't had its place in the metagame for a while, but I just thought, I'm like, man, with this build, with the Dragoon, and then with the Link 2 pretty much spam, I guess you could call it. It's not really spam, but Link 2 rush, like you really want to rush into Verte, then you can actually end up on really good boards, right? So that's why I just thought, this was the best way to go about it. The Dragoon package is just too good in this deck, and I didn't want to pass up on the opportunity to use it, right? Now, before moving on to the spell cards here, though, I am going to say I forgot to write something down real quick, so let me just do that. Okay, good. Now that we got that out of the way, we are playing triple pot of Extravagance. Now, Extravagance is really important because you don't use much of your extra deck, again, outside of the Dragoon as well as the Verte. So that's why I'm playing the triple Extravagance. Now, I'm going to go into it a little bit more detail when I get into the extra deck and when I get through a little more cards. But Extravagance is just really good in this deck overall. Gets you extra free card. Like a +1 is really good, right? And you always need a card in hand for the Dragoon, so a +1 is always relevant in this deck. Then we're playing one Monster Reborn just because once the Trickstars go to the graveyard, outside of Lilybell, you don't have a lot of ways of getting them back. So Monster Reborn is really good for that. Helps you push for game in a lot of situations. So Monster Reborn is really good just any time of the duel when you draw it, right? Then we are playing one Scapegoat. Now this is what I wanted to talk about. So Scapegoat I think is really good, and I think it's a card that not a lot of people play anymore, of course, because it's at 1. But in Trickstar it just makes so much sense because Trickstar notoriously has a problem with outing big monsters. Now, Korobane helped with that a little bit. However, for the most part, your Trickstar monsters are pretty small, right? So I really wanted to play one Scapegoat because going first and being able to set a Scapegoat is insanely good. Like, okay, so imagine you can set up a normal board of like a Dragoon, right? So you have Verte plus Dragoon on the board, and then let's say you set a Scapegoat and you just set any trap. Literally does not matter, a Compulse, let's say, right? At your opponent's end phase, what you can do is flip the Scapegoat, and then now you have your Link Karibo, Link Spider, and then your Nightmare monsters to get into Borrelsword to help you OTK. Because Borrelsword plus Dragoon is going to be able to break your opponent's board as well as just beat your opponent, right? So that's why I thought Scapegoat was low-key one of those cards that people won't think of. It's also a chainable card, which means that if they want to use like a back row removal, let's say something like a Cosmic Cyclone, you can actually chain the Scapegoat and still get the use out of it. So I thought this card was really good in the deck, but I will say that if you don't want to play this, now the whole entire extra deck pretty much is just catered around Scapegoat as well as the Dragoon package, right? That's pretty much it. But if you guys want to cut the Scapegoat, well, another good option is Super Poly. So the reason I play Super Poly, or the reason I would suggest Super Poly if it's not Scapegoat, is because that you don't really use your extra deck, like I said, outside of the Dragoon and the Verte. So what you can do is if you play the one Super Poly, you can make a second Verte and then send the Super Poly, and then you can play a bunch of Super Poly targets. Now what that helps you do is it helps you break your opponent's board going second, right? On top of that, even if you go first, you can set the Super Poly and then use the Super Poly on your opponent's turn, right? So it sounds pretty good. However, the only issue is if you set the Super Poly, let's say, right? If you use it off of the Verte, it's not that bad, but if you set the Super Poly, you'll have to have a card to discard. And with Dragoon, it makes it a little bit harder because now you have to discard a card off Dragoon as well. And then at that point, you're kind of sacrificing your trap cards or whatever else is in your hand for a Dragoon and for a Super Poly, right? Where they might not be able to win you the game flat out. So that's why I decided to go with the Scapegoat. But if you do want to play the Super Poly, I would suggest play one if instead of the Scapegoat, and then you would just change these cards pretty much just to the Super Poly targets, right? So it's very simple, very self-explanatory. So that's the only thing that you would change, or I would change, I would say. But I wouldn't change it. I really like the Scapegoat. But if you don't like the Scapegoat, it's just preference. You can play the Super Poly in this spot instead. And then lastly, for the spell cards, obviously we're playing one Light Stage. Unfortunately, with the ban list, it's only at 1. However, I will say that hopefully in this upcoming ban list, maybe we get Light Stage back to 3. That would spice things up. So hopefully if we can get this back to 3, then I'll do an updated video for you guys for sure. But Light Stage obviously is a really good card, so we have to play it at 1. Next up for the trap cards, I'm just playing the best trap cards in my opinion of the format, which is Imperm. It's a really good card because going first, it's a trap. But going second is also a hand trap, so it's really good for that sense. And then you're playing double Warning Point, double Sanctum, triple Ice Dragon's Prison, triple Reincarnation, double Lost Wind, triple Trap Trick, of course, because it searches all of these other traps, and then double Compulse. Now I'm going to go into a little bit more detail. The reason I'm only playing double Warning Point is because this card is really good to search off of the Trap Trick. However, after turns 1, right, it's not as good as you might think. The reason for that is because when a monster is summoned, that monster cannot attack and its effects are negated. Also, it cannot be used as a material for fusion, synchro, Ixies, or link summons, right? Okay, cool. Now this card in theory is insane. However, by the mid game, right, let's say you're in turns 3, turns 4, your opponent would have already comboed off. Now keep in mind, a lot of this format is a combo format. You know, there's always formats where back row heavy decks and control decks are better, and there's also formats where combo decks are better. I would say this format is a lot more catered towards the combo decks. The combo decks are just really good, can put up really big boards, can play through hand traps. So the thing is with Warning Point is, although it's really good and it can stop your opponent flat out turn 1, let's say if I set it first turn, it's really good. However, turns 2, turns 3 in the mid game, it's not as good once my opponent has already used their combos, right? So I am still playing it at 2 because if I open, let's say, an Imperm and an Ice Dragons, then I can Trap Trick out the Warning Point, right? So that's a really good option as well, and that's why I just thought Warning Point was a really good card. Didn't want to max it out at 3. Same thing with Sanctum. Now Sanctum is really good going first, right? Because if you can set it up turn 1, then you can Sanctum your opponent and your opponent can't go to the extra deck. Again, two reasons why we're only playing it at 2 is because we're only playing one scythe, so playing 3 would be not as great because then you could draw into the second and the third one and they're kind of dead. But on top of that is if you get into your Sanctum in the mid game, again, turns 3, turns 4, your opponent would have already gone through their extra deck, would have already comboed off, so Sanctum doesn't become as impactful, right? Whereas Imperm, always impactful. Ice Dragon's Prison, always impactful. You got your Reincarnation, of course, is because it's this deck and because you have the Droll and Lock and Reincarnation, you have to play triple Reincarnation. Then we're playing double Lost Wind. Now, Lost Wind is really good for a couple reasons. One, it's really good to pitch off Dragoon. So if you have this card in your hand and you're thinking, okay, what card do I want to keep in my hand for Dragoon, right? So let's say you make Dragoon, you'll have 3 cards left in your hand, right? Usually that's just the combo, you'll have 3 cards left in your hand. Now you can only set 2 of them. Let's say they're all 3 are trap cards. You can only set 2 of them because you need the card for the Dragoon. So Lost Wind is really good to have in your hand because even if you pitch it off Dragoon, you can set it back to your side of the field when your opponent special summons from the extra deck, and then it gets you a second use for Lost Wind. Now the reason I decided to play 2 instead of 3 was because I decided to play Compulse instead. Because if I had played 3 of this, then I'd be at 42 cards, which I guess wouldn't be that bad. I wouldn't play Compulse at just 1, because Compulse only makes sense at 2 with the Trap Trick. I wouldn't play it at 1. So if you play the third Lost Wind, maybe you can just cut Compulse altogether and then play 42 cards. However, I like to count at 43 to be completely honest with you, because at 43 you see these very minimal. Like, you don't see these very often, right, at 43. So I didn't want to cut it to 42, and so I just decided, what's a really good trap card going first? Compulse. Compulse is also really impactful at any point in the game, right? It's not just good going first, it's good at any point in the game. So the reason I wanted to play these at 3, the Imperm, the Reincarnation, as well as the Ice Dragons, is because they're impactful at any point. Compulse is pretty much impactful at any point. Lost Wind is pretty good with the Dragoon. It's also pretty impactful at any point. Warning Point is not as good. It's really just good turns 1, but it can be a blowout card. Like, if you set this up, it can be insane. Now, after going in depth with the main deck, I did want to explain that I'm only playing 14 cards in the extra deck, and you guys have probably seen it here. And the only reason we're playing 14 is because I couldn't think of a 15th card, so that's completely up to preferences. Whatever you want to play, I will leave it up to you. However, I will say that if you wanted to play a third Dragoon or a third Verte, because you're scared of banishing off Extravagance, like maybe cutting a Cerberus over here, and then once you cut the Cerberus, you can play a third Dragoon as well as a third Verte. It's really up to you. However, this is pretty much the extra deck that you need. The 15th card is not as relevant, but you're playing the true Dragoon, obviously your Dragoon combo. You're playing double Verte, of course, because that's how you get to Dragoon. You're playing Boral Sword, and then all these cards to get into Boral Sword. So double Phoenix, double Cerberus, double Link Spider, and double Link Karibo. The reason you're doing this again is only because of the Extravagance. You don't go into your extra deck that often outside of the Scapegoat play and outside of the Dragoon play. That's all you're really going to the extra deck for. And like I said earlier, if you play the Super Poly instead of the Scapegoat, then boom, just play a bunch of Super Poly targets, right? So it's really completely up to you. If you wanted to make this a 44 card deck and play the Super Poly as well, you can do that. But again, the pitching cards from hand I didn't like with the Dragoon play, so if that makes sense. And Verte is always going to make Dragoon turn 1, right? So that's just why I decided not to play it at all. But however, you could also side it if you wanted to, right? So that's just another option. I just want to put it out there for you guys. But I just thought this deck was really good. A lot of testing went into this, and I decided to play like 3 different versions of this, and then I came up with like this as the final result, right? This is the best in my opinion with today's metagame. Now I do have a going second Trickstar Kaiju build, which you guys will probably see next week. That's just another option of a way to play it, but this is a going first build, and I just thought this deck was really competitive for what it is, and it's the best way to play Trickstar in my opinion for this format. Okay, so with that being said, I hope you guys enjoyed the video. That is the deck profile. Now again, like I said at the beginning of the video, there is a going second build that I'm going to be showcasing off to you guys next week. So if you guys haven't already, make sure to have that notification button on, because this way you'll see that video as soon as it comes out. Also, if you guys have any suggestions, let me know in the comment section down below. I always love to hear what you guys have to say about the decks. If you guys have any suggestions, let me know in the comment section down below. We can have a conversation, and check out the social media. Everything will be linked in the description below. I have a lot of conversations. I'm really active on Twitter, so if you guys really want to talk to me and see the behind the scenes, it's mostly on Twitter. Instagram and stuff I do as well, but not as much. Twitter is where I'm the biggest at, so if you guys want to check that out, feel free. Thank you guys for watching. I hope you guys enjoyed, and with that, Spanko signing out. Peace.
My hands steady, I feel ready, but my legs heavy, I don't get it. How come I haven't hit it already? Still working, I'm still learning, I'm still searching, finally earning something, finally turning something called a profit. If I hear you talking shit, don't get caught in it. I'll be popping off and hit your ass, dropping all your shit. Yeah, I promise this, I got promises, you ain't stopping this. Cross my shit.